Well, Shabbat Shalom to you and yours, and welcome to Return the Remnant Ministry. We are continuing our study in the book of Revelation. We're now in chapter 6. We're going to talk about the 6 seals today. And for many of you, I'm sure you're in the 7th month, getting ready. Have already probably done Yom Teruah and continuing on with the fall feasts. I kind of felt like I had a breakthrough on Yom Teruah with a prophetic, some prophecy related to Yom Teruah that hopefully in the near future I will put together a teaching on the future prophetic fulfillment of Yom Teruah. It should be pretty good. So we'll try and get to that hopefully after this Revelation teaching, this series is done. So we're going to get into Revelation chapter 6 today, and just want to take a look at my notes. A lot of good stuff. I think you'll hopefully get something out of this. And as always, leave your comments below. Like, subscribe. I'm going to try and continue doing this every week if I can, if not every other week. And if you have any other thoughts on some of the things that I'm going through and discussing, you know, we're all in this together. We're all trying to learn and share on things. So to me, if you were to ask me where we're at in Revelation right now, there are many people who believe from the cough, what transpired in 2019 and 2020, that was the first seal of Revelation. I do not believe that. I believe all the seals that we see, I believe that the Antichrist is going to have a role to play in each one of the first 5 seals. But to me, the world has to change. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I've got a slide. I kind of put some slides up. This is a shortened version of a teaching that I did again in the Philippines that I was going to do in 2020, but was unable to go because of you know what. So I'm going to dance around a little bit today, and hopefully this won't take a long time. Again, I'm going to be reading out of the Hebrew Revelation. I think you'll find some interesting things in this particular chapter that you won't see in most of the translations out there, specifically with the horses, the color of the horses. But anyway, I'll quit rambling on. I hope this won't take too long. It should be under an hour. So hopefully you'll be able to sit back and enjoy and maybe get a couple little gold tidbits of nuggets here from this teaching. So before I go ahead and read it, I'm going to go through some things on this PowerPoint here. And we know, as I said last week, in Matthew 24, if we only had Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13, those accounts of Yeshua, what he said to his disciples, I really feel that we would still be left out in the dark. And Revelation, the revelation that was given to Yeshua from the Father helps us see some things that maybe we wouldn't see, even though a lot of the things in Revelation we can find in Yeshua's sayings and also in areas of the Tanakh. And you'll see some of that as we go along through this. But going into Matthew 24 for just a minute before we get into Revelation 6 with the 6 seals, we obviously know the whole background story. You know, the disciples are asking Yeshua, and they're asking him, saying, well, tell us, when will these things be, and what will the sign of your coming and the close of the age? And Yeshua gave his disciples and to us a roadmap, which basically we're going to see in Revelation 6 through 8, all the way to his return to gather the elect and afterwards the wrath of Yahweh. And keep in mind that the majority of what Yeshua said in Matthew 24 is bride terminology. He's explaining to his bride what is going to take place before he returns. He doesn't go into much of the wrath that we see in the trumpets, the bowl judgments, the woes, and all those other things. And so these are the things we need to be concerned about. Excuse me, more than anything are the seals and the things that relate to us prior to his second coming. And what you're going to find out here is what we read about in Matthew 24 and what we're going to be reading today and next week, and even possibly into chapter 8. I haven't really decided yet where we're going to be with the next teaching on this, but that what he tells his disciples in Matthew 24 line up verbatim with these events that are talked about in Revelation chapter 6 all the way up to Revelation chapter 8. And the odds, the probability of this not being the same thing is over 1 in 1 trillion. And so you can take this to the bank. You can literally take this to the bank. If you take a look here at what Yeshua tells his disciples in Matthew 24, if you look into context, how he reads this out, he says, beware of the false prophets and messiahs. There's going to be wars and rumors of wars. There's going to be famine until the abomination of desolation is going to be martyrdom. The sun's darkened, the moon will be darkened, the stars will fall. We're going to talk about the stars here in a minute. And the signs of the sky will be split open. The tribes are going to mourn. Yeshua then appears in the sky. And then there's later on in chapter 7, which he talks about back in Matthew 24, taking away the saints. And this happens prior to Yahweh's wrath being poured out. Now, I'm not going to get involved with this whole pre-trib, post-trib, pre-wrath doctrine. I just know that there are a sequence of events that happen. And at some point in time, Yeshua is going to return. And then a lot of other things are going to happen. So before we get too deep into that, let's just stick with Revelation chapter 6 today. So as I said before, I really feel like the world has to change to set things in order for the Antichrist to rise. And how that happens, I don't know, whether it's a global pandemic, whether it's a destruction of the economies worldwide, world wars. I mean, take your pick. We're living in that day and age where any of this stuff could happen. And what I see coming out of this is I see the sovereignty of nations going away. We know we had the League of Nations after World War I, and that ended up kind of failing. And then we had the United Nations after World War II. And there's something like 195 countries that are part of that out of 230 or so nations around the world that are part of this global network. And I believe one day, as I've written down here in Daniel 7:24, as for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall arise. And whether or not these 10 kings are 10 financial leaders, influencers, who knows what they could be, but they will sway with a lot of power. And another, so once this happens, once these 10 kings or powerful people take control basically over the whole world, if you will, the financial sector, who knows what that looks like. One is going to come up and rise up from among them. And I believe that person, that figure is already here. And that one person is going to be the Antichrist. So I really believe all these things have to happen. And we've heard, I'm not going to name names, but the Great Reset. We have the Great Reset. We have the Fourth Industrial Revolution. This whole thing of you'll own nothing and be happy. We have the rollout of the central bank digital currency that looks like it's coming. We also have in opposition to that the BRICS nations that are getting involved. There are so many ways that you can play this out. And what's amazing is we are living in end times. There are people, the prophets of old wish to see the things that are taking shape right now. There are commentators, Spurgeon, Clark, these people in the 1800s who tried their best with the times they were living in to understand, but it's even more clearer now with what's going on than even beforehand back 200-300 years ago. So that's my thought process, is that the world has to change before these seals open. And I will submit to you that I believe that these seals, these first 5 seals, is going to be the Antichrist's rise to power, this timeline of him rising to power to then having total authority over the earth. If we take a look, we know that the first seal is this creature says, "Come and see." And the first one is he who sat on it had a bow and a crown was given to it. And I believe that this crown signifies authority and rulership and to go out conquering. These could be early military conquests of the Antichrist, followed by the second seal, where peace is taken away. There is no shalom, hardly any shalom to be found on the earth, and people are going to slay each other with the sword. We could have all sorts of things going on. This is then, I believe, going to lead up to the third seal, which is famine and the scales, and how it's going to be really hard to live in a world when there's not a lot of food. And that is going to bring forth and bring about the rider on the fourth horse of death. And we notice, if you look here, to kill 1/4 of the earth with sword, famine, pestilence, and wild beasts. And isn't that interesting that if you go back into the Torah, I believe it's Leviticus 26, we have the blessings of Yahweh and the curses of Yahweh. And those that do not follow Yahweh's instructions, there will be curses that will be put upon the world. And those are the curses: sword and famine, pestilence, and wild beasts. And so it is super, super important, people, to be a saint in these days. And the definition of a saint, according to Revelation 12:17 and Revelation 14:12, are those that have the testimony of Yeshua and keep the commandments of Yah. And those commandments come out of the first 5 books, which are called the Torah and the Bible. All the commandments, everything that applies to you, we should be actively striving to fulfill them, to understand them, and to obey them. And then lastly, again, during this rise to power, I believe, then the Antichrist, once he gets that authority over the earth, then we see the full blown out tribulation and martyrdom. There will be tribulation and martyrdom leading up to this 5th seal. We see it now, but not on the scale that we're going to see when that 5th seal is open. So let's go in. We're going to read chapter 6, and then I want to make a little more commentary, give a little more commentary on some interesting takes as I was reading this. Because again, remember, reading Revelation according to the book of Revelation is a blessing, to read it out loud and to hear the words of this prophecy. So let's get into Revelation chapter 6, verse 1, and please follow along with your translation. You may find some things that are interesting with what I'm going to read. Then I saw that the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard the 4 living creatures say, like one voice, "Come and see." Then I saw a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow in his hand, and a crown was given to him. And he went to overcome, and he overcame. Or it can mean to conquer, and he conquered. And when the second seal was open, I heard the second living creature say, "Come and see." Then another horse went out, a red one, and he who sat on it was given to take away the shalom from the earth, and a great sword was given to him. And when he opened the third seal, the third living creature said, "Come and see." Then I saw a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of balances, or scales, in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, 1 measure of wheat for a coin, and 3 measures of barley for a coin, and to the oil and the wine do not damage. And when he opened the 4th seal, I heard the 4th living creature say, "Come and see." Then I saw a speckled and strong horse. And I'm sure it's not the same as your translation, so it's interesting. Then I saw a speckled and strong horse, and he who sat on it, his name was the messenger of death. And Gehinnom followed after him. And authority was given to him to put to death 1/4 part of the earth with the sword, and with famine, and with death, and by the animals of the earth. And when he opened the fifth, I saw under the temple the neshamot, meaning the souls or the blowing breath, who were killed because of the set apartness of Yahweh and because of the testimony which they had. And they cried out with a great voice and said, Set apart and faithful, Adon, until when? So set apart and faithful, Lord, until when will you judge without avenging our blood from those who dwell on the earth? And to every one of them were given white garments, and it was said to them, You must rest yet a little time. And I saw that he opened the sixth, and there was an earthquake, and the sun was black, and the moon was red like blood, and all their host withered like a leaf withers from a vine, and like that which withers and falls from a fig tree. And all the mountains and hills were shaken away from their place, and the kings of the earth, and the rulers, and the rich ones, and the officers, and the slaves, and the free ones, hid in caves, in the rocks, and holes in the ground. And they said to the mountains and to the rocks, Fall on us and hide us because of the appearance of him who sits on the throne and because of the fury of the Lamb. For the day of his burning anger has come, and who is able to stand before him? And thus ends our reading of Revelation chapter 6. One thing to note as I'm going through this book, it's interesting because, again, we have the Hebrew and we have the English, and then there's a little bit of commentary regarding the Hebrew and some commentary regarding the English. And one thing I thought was interesting, I have to research this, but there's a Hebrew word, idut, an Ayin Dalet Vav Tav. And when it says, I'll go back to chapter 6, second part of verse 9, those that were killed because of the set apartness of Yahweh and because of the testimony or idut, which they had. And interesting, the person that translated this gave a commentary that the word for testimony in our English, again, as I said, comes from the Hebrew word idut, which can also be considered one of the names for the Torah. And as I said before, we need to be actively striving to follow the Torah and the commandments that pertain to each and every one of us. For instance, if you're a woman, there are certain commandments you have to follow, especially like, for instance, if you're bearing a child, there's a section on that. If it's a boy or a girl, what you are to do. If you're a Levite, if you are a king, if you are someone who is a gardener or a shepherd who has animals. So there's different mishpatim, if you will, and different mitzvot. Because I'll throw this question out to people. I ask them, I say, now, did Jesus or Yeshua, did he keep all the commandments? And I always hear people say, well, yeah, he kept them all. And I said, really? Is Yeshua a woman? Was Yeshua a Levite? Remember, Yeshua was from the tribe of Judah. And then they kind of come around and say, yeah, you're right. He didn't. And I'm like, but all the commandments that pertained to Yeshua that he needed to follow, he followed perfectly. So, anywho, I'll get off my soapbox here. Let's get back to Revelation chapter 6, verse 1. As I said before, there's many parts of Revelation that we can find snippets of in other books of the Bible. And this is a perfect example. In chapter 6, verse 1, when John is looking at these four horses, in our Bibles that we have, it's always that fourth horse that we read in here that we say, gosh, is it pale? Is it this? Is it that? And we can't make the connection to Zechariah chapter 6 because Zechariah chapter 6 has these four horses, and three of the four are the same. But when you look here in the Hebrew version of Revelation, they are exactly the same. So if we take a look here if I read Zechariah chapter 6, verse 1 through 5, it says, "And I turned and lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, there came 4 chariots out from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were mountains of brass. In the first chariot were red horses." So we got the red here, and we've got the red in the Hebrew version. "And the second chariot, black horses." So we got 2 here, and in Revelation, yep, black horses. "And the third chariot, white horses." And over here in Revelation, a white horse. So we're 3 for 3. "But then the fourth chariot, speckled, some versions may have spotted, and strong horses." And when we look in our normal, not normal, but like in the King James, the ESV, ASV, NASB, it's usually a pale or green horse, but not here. When I look here at the Hebrew Revelation translation, that fourth one was a speckled and strong horse, just like Zechariah saw, speckled and strong horse. So interesting. I think very, very interesting. So let's continue on. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this because I think it's going to maybe shake you a little bit, or maybe just, we got to test everything. And this is just one possibility, but this is one that I feel strongly about. And again, as I've said before, prophecy, end time prophecy, is very fluid. And I believe we need to stay humble and trainable and learnable as events transpire. Our understanding of the events and the timelines and what we think we know, we may have to tweak it a little bit. We need to be willing to do that, because if we are willing to do that, we're going to learn. And if we don't do that, we're going to be stuck like people I know who have thought 20 years ago about a certain prophecy. And even though things have changed and it looks different now, they stay with it. They're not willing to change. And to me, it makes it very, very hard to be teachable when you have that kind of attitude. So let's get into these unripe figs. So in Revelation chapter 6, verse 13, it says that all their host withered. All their hosts wither like a leaf withers from a vine, and like that which withers and falls from a fig tree. And in most translations, it'll say, because I read it in this version here, which sounds different, but in most versions, and I think this is pretty much paraphrasing out of the King James, but it says, "The stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind." And this is happening during the 6th seal. And I'm going to submit to you that the stars of heaven are not literal stars, especially what John sees here, his paradigm, as he's trying to picture and understand that. These are the angels. Primarily, well, they are the fallen, disobedient angels. These are the ones that fell from heaven to the earth. And you're going to see this is nothing different than what God had said back in Isaiah chapter 34, verse 4. Take a look and read it sometime, but I'm going to read it here. "All the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, and all their hosts shall fall down as the leaf falls off from the vine, and as a falling fig from the fig tree." Now, I've got a couple different fig trees out in the yard, and sometimes we get some, especially our brown turkey fig, and sometimes in the springtime, we get some early figs that show up before the main crop of figs. And if I were to go over there and shake that fig tree a little bit and maybe make it kind of like wind, the green ones that haven't ripened yet will stay on there, but the ones that ripen a little too early will fall off. So there's kind of the analogy that we see here. We see that these unripe figs, these rebellious angels in heaven, fell. Peter even understood this. In 2 Peter 3:10, the first part of it says, "It'll come, the day of the Lord, as a thief in the night, in which the heavens with a rushing noise will pass away." We know that the heavens are going to be judged first. Plenty of scriptures. You can research it, do a check on Esau, but he is going to roll up the heavens like a scroll. He's going to take care of matters in the heavens first before he takes care of them on earth. And we're going to see that in Revelation 12. We see in Revelation 12 there's this war in heaven. Verse 4, it says, "And his tail," whose tail? The dragon, the devil, HaSatan, his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. And we read later, we can verify this because in Revelation 12, verse 9, it says that the devil, or Satan, and his angels were cast to the earth. There was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought Satan and his angels, and they lost. Satan and his angels lost, and they were cast to earth, just as an unripe fig is cast to the earth when it's shaken by a wind, a mighty wind. We can verify this. We can verify this a little bit with what Yeshua was saying. What he was saying to his disciples on earth in Revelation 24. And you're going to see something here, and I'm hoping, I hope I can get it across in a way that will make sense. So Yeshua is talking to his disciples in Revelation 24, 29 through 33. He says the following: "Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven." And he's explaining that exactly how it's going to happen in Revelation 6. And keep in mind, Revelation 6 is an event that happens. Later, when we get into this, and I'll go back and forth as we go through the chapters, but Revelation 12 gives us the details of this event of Revelation 6. So the stars are falling from heaven. That's Revelation 6. That is the event. Revelation 12 explains how that is. There's war in heaven, and Satan's angels fought and lost, and they were cast down. Okay? It says, "Then the powers of the heavens shall be shaken." So these things have to happen. And then what does it say? "And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven." And I believe the veil in the heavens, and I'm going to try and do this teaching, just as the veil of the temple was ripped when Yeshua was exposed to mankind as the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world, as he's hanging there on the tree at Calvary, what happens? It says the earth shook, earthquake happened, the earth shook, the sun went dark. And it says that the temple, the veil in the temple was rent. Okay? Before he gives up the Holy Spirit. Before he dies. That's his first coming. To me, the second coming, there's war in heaven, the veil, as everything it says here, as it's going to be rolled up like a scroll. We read about in Isaiah 34, in other areas. And when it's rolled up as a scroll, I believe the veil in the heavens are going to be opened up that we couldn't see before, that we will see. And then when that happens, the Son of Man, Yeshua HaMashiach, is going to be revealed to us. And I'm going to get into a teaching on that, and I'll do it later. But here it says, "And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory." And those of us that have made it through tribulation are going to be alive. We're going to be so thankful, and oh, hallelujah! Here's our coming King. But those who didn't, those who transgressed, those who thought they didn't need Yeshua, it says that they're going to hide. they're going to hide. I won't get to that yet, but we know that happens in Revelation 6. So anyway, it says that they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he, that's Yeshua, shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. And again, I'm not going to give away this punchline, but this is Yom Teruah, folks. This is Yom Teruah. This is why we shout. This is why we blow the shofar. This is why we make a joyful, great noise. And like I said, I'm going to do a big teaching on this. Well, not a big teaching, but I'm going to do a teaching of why I believe that this event happens on Yom Teruah. Could I be wrong? Maybe so. But I think the prophetic implication of Yom Teruah is the second coming of Yeshua. And again, I will give you several details of why I believe this is so. But let's continue. So Yeshua is now going to, with this trumpet, he's going to gather the elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. And we read about this. This is the event that he's talking about, and we get the details of it in Revelation 14, how that happens. So, going to go back. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now, this is where I'm leading up to this point of the next verse. Because many of us have been taught, and I'm not disputing this, that we see places in the Tanakh that talks about Israel being an olive tree. And I totally agree with that. And I think there's other areas where it talks about Israel being a fig tree. So I get that too. But in the context of what Yeshua is explaining here in Matthew 24, some people will say, well, see, this is when Israel became a nation in 1948. It put forth its leaves tender, and that this generation will not pass until all is fulfilled. And we are in that generation. There are people that were born in the 40s. You know, my dad was born in the 40s, late 40s, and he's still alive today. And he is a believer in Yeshua and keeps the Torah. And so, yes, you could look at it from that perspective, but I believe there's something else going on here. So let's read it. Yeshua, after giving this whole synopsis of his return, the events that are going to take place, he says, now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So likewise you, when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. And what I believe is, when he's making this analogy of the parable of the fig tree, is the angels that are falling. The heavens, there's war in heaven. Satan and his angels fall. They fall from heaven like the fig tree being shaken by a mighty wind. Shortly after they fall, I believe they go after the 144,000, but the 144,000 are taken up. And then they go after, just like Revelation 7 says, we're going to get into next week. The 144,000 are sealed. Line that up with Revelation 12. Because then it says Satan and his fallen ones go after the rest of the woman and her seed, which is the great tribulation, and those that we read about in Revelation 7 after the 144,000 that are robed in white, that have made it through the tribulation saints before Yeshua's coming. And I guess I don't have any more of that. Yeah. So to me, what I see here, what I see on this parable of the fig tree, yes, we can say that this fig tree parable may deal with Israel. It may deal with the generation not passing until these things happen. And we are in that timeline. I really believe we're in that timeline where we're going to see these seals opening soon. How soon? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. and I'm not going to set dates. But I think that this parable that Yeshua talks about is, even though you're going to see something happen that's going to be incredible, and it's going to be incredible, it's going to be scary, know that it's just a little while longer, not much longer, and Yeshua is going to return. So anyway, I mean, when, like I said, so likewise when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Yeshua is going to be coming back. When we see these things, know that this timing is going to be, oh my goodness. I think part of this, when he says what he says here, is to give us hope that even though we're going to see these things in the heavens and all this stuff opening up, and maybe these fallen ones, Satan and his fallen ones, may come with this deception of, hey, we're from another world. We seeded you. We're your creators. We're your gods. And maybe this is another reason why all this sci-fi stuff is being propagated. I mean, it is being promoted like nobody's business. We have people talking about it now, all this aerial phenomenon, and it may be a big setup. So I think Yeshua is saying the things he's saying is to not give up hope. And one of the first things he said to his disciples and to us is, be not deceived. And the one takeaway I try and tell people, even if we don't fully understand Revelation, there's one thing that we do need to understand. And that is, no matter how the Antichrist comes up, it sounds to me like what we read about, he's going to be on earth. He's going to do things on earth, but he will not come the way Yeshua is going to come. Yeshua is going to come from the heavens, and every eye is going to see. It's going to be something that even HaSatan and his fallen ones will not be able to replicate. And that's when we'll know that's the Messiah. Not until then. So if you're struggling through reading Revelation, keep that part in mind so that you are not deceived. So I think that will end this part of Revelation chapter 6. I'm glad I was able to keep it short. And again, if you've got any questions or comments on this, I may be way off base on this, but I really feel that there's definitely a lot of similarities between Revelation 6, 7, and 8 and the 13 events that Yeshua discussed with his disciples. And I know hopefully next week, we're going to get in Revelation 7. Hopefully I can tie that in a little bit more, and hopefully we can continue to build on this as we go through. Understand that what John saw was like a big prophetic picture of several pictures. When he says, then I looked and I saw this, and then I looked and I saw that it's one big storyline, but it's broken into different areas. And that's the way I think is the best way to read Revelation. We get events, and then we get details into those events, and then we get more events, and we get details into those events. So anyway, I hope this was a blessing to you guys. And again, may you guys have happy feast days during this 7th month. And if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, feel free to put them in the comment below. Until I see you next time, shalom.